Welcome back to another episode of Pastor's Point. We're so glad that you're joining us tonight. We're going to be on session 7 of our leadership class called Accelerate. And tonight we're going to be talking about faith goals. So grab your pencil, paper, grab a cup of coffee. McDonald's is the best. I'm just kidding. And let's get started. What is a faith goal? Those are some of the things that we want to answer. Why should we establish goals? I think we all hear about goals and we all agree that goals are important, but oftentimes we don't take goals from a thought to inking it on paper. There's an old saying, if you think it, ink it. And that is so important because faith goals really are the launching pad for your life. We all need faith goals. I think about this. I used to love to play basketball, and I thought, what if you took the goals away? The basketball goals. All you'd be doing is running back and forth, chasing a ball. I mean, the fun would be out of it. If you took a touchdown goal or a field goal out of football, it would take the fun away. And so goals are extremely important, not only in our life, but also in the area of sports and other areas. I've heard it said that you can accomplish 50 to 100 times more with goals than you could if you didn't have specific goals. So let's jump into this. I want to start with 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 26 to 27. This may be a familiar passage to you. It says, "So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should do. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified." So what is he saying here? He's saying life with no goals basically is like shadow boxing. There's no target to hit. You spend a lot of energy doing it, but it's not going to get you anywhere. And so it is so important that we train our bodies to do what it should do. Well, what should it do? The Word of God gives us goals. It gives us direction. It gives us parameters. And so in our own lives, as God speaks to our hearts about what our long-term vision is and why you're on this planet, we need to set little goals on the way to this big macro vision. So let's jump into this. Successful leaders measure and track progress consistently. I think that, we've been talking a lot about leaders, characteristics of leaders, the fact that we are all called to be leaders. And I think it's very important to understand that leaders need some measurable metric by which we can judge whether we're successful in the direction that we're heading. I think it's incredibly important. On the interstate, as you're driving, you have mile markers. Those mile markers tell you that you're getting closer and closer to whatever exit you need to take. And faith goals do that for us as well as we're on this way to navigating towards the vision that God's called us to and the purpose for which we're on this planet. So what is a faith goal? A faith goal is the motor in this thing that powers the vision, okay? Micro steps to a macro plan is how I like to say it. They're little micro steps on this macro plan. What's the macro plan? It's the vision for your life. It could be a lifetime of things, but the micro steps, the goals, those are small achievable things that are measured so that we know that we are going in the right direction. Vision is much more general. It's much more general. It's like a painting, all right? A goal is very specific with deadlines. I think that's incredibly important to understand that we can set small deadlines or shorter deadlines for goals, which also kind of push us to get things done. Muhammad Ali said this. I find this really interesting. He said, "I win the first round, the last round, in the first 10 seconds of every other round. That's all the judges will remember." Isn't that interesting? So he had goals. His goal was, number one, I'm going to come out in this fight. I'm going to put all the energy that I can into the first round. I'm going to win the first round. And then For at least 10 seconds of every single other round, I'm going to put all effort into this thing, and I'm going to hit this guy as many times as I can, because that's what they're going to remember. And then the last round, I want to win as well. That was his strategy to winning the overall fight, the big picture, the vision, or the overall fight. But he had small goals on the way to that. Win the first round, the second round, and 10 seconds of each other round. A faith goal is like a brush stroke in a painting. It's just one stroke. It makes up one line of paint in this big picture that will eventually all come to fruition. It's a micro step in the direction of your macro picture. I love this verse in Ephesians 2:10, and I've quoted it many times on Sunday mornings as well. Ephesians 2:10 says, we are God's masterpiece. He created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. See, each one of us, we've talked about this, as leaders, each one of us has a big picture from God. He has something that He has planned for us long ago. We need to know what that is. Okay? Maybe that's to establish an orphanage in Latin America. Maybe it's to start a Christian school here in town. Maybe it's to be a medical doctor and to help people get healthy. Whatever that is that God's put you on this planet for, we need to set little goals so that we know that we're getting closer and closer to accomplishing what God set forth for us to accomplish a long time ago. 95% of the people that you meet on the street have zero goals. Isn't that crazy? 97% of all pastors don't have goals because they're too busy putting out fires in the church. That's a sad place to be. Man, we are not called to be firefighters constantly putting out little fires. We're called to set the vision and equip the people to do the ministry and point them in the right direction. Goals are the steering wheel in the car that direct your life on a short-term, moment-to-moment basis. Most people take more time, this is sad, to plan vacation than they do to plan their life. Man, that can be convicting, can't it? Even after we've established what the vision of our life is or the long-term purpose of our life is, it's easy to get into a rhythm of setting goals, and then it's also easy to get out of that rhythm. And so maybe this is just a good refresher for you that maybe we need to go back and kind of refine some of those micro goals on the way to this macro vision. Sometimes couples in planning a wedding, they'll take 6 months to plan a wedding, but they don't invest any time in planning their marriage. We put more effort into planning our wedding, that special day, so it goes perfect. But then once it comes to the point where we're married and the celebration is behind us, how much time do we invest in setting goals for our own marriage and in becoming a better husband or a better wife, to become better parents? These should also be goals that go into the planning of being parents. In 1950, there was a Harvard research that was done. It was a 20-year study. What they did is they asked the class how many of them had goals. And 95% of the class said that they had no goals. Okay, 5% said that they had goals, but only 3% had wrote it down. At the end of this 20-year study, the 5% that had goals made more money combined than all 95% of the rest of the class together. Picture that for a minute. 5% of that class accumulated more wealth and made more money than the 95% of their classmates that at the beginning of that study had no goals. So it is absolutely imperative that you and I establish some goals. Just like brush strokes in a painting, we need to continue to set these micro goals so that we can accomplish the macro picture. How do we set goals? First thing that we have to do, and I think this is important to write down, be specific in your goals. Okay, be specific. If you're trying to get to a destination, you don't just randomly select a place on the map and say, I think I'll go there. No, there is a specific path that you're going to take to get to the vision. If we're going to Florida, back in the olden days, right, before we had our phones and we just put it in our GPS, we'd probably pull out a ruler. We'd stick it on the Quad Cities and we would put it right to Orlando, Florida, if that was the destination. We may even put a highlight marker across the atlas or the map and then identify the interstates or the roads that will keep us as close to a straight path to Orlando as possible. So then we might establish some stopping points for gas, food, maybe a hotel room for a night. So we set these specific goals, specific direction, so that we ultimately get to Orlando. An airport, before you buy a ticket to get somewhere, they want to know where you're going. It's not like, I'd like a plane ticket. Okay, where are you flying to? I don't know, just give me a plane ticket. They would think you were crazy. Hebrews 11:1 says this, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So let me rephrase that for a minute for all of us. Now faith is the substance of things. Faith is the substance of our goals. Faith is the substance of our objectives that we hope to accomplish. Even though we may not see them, we need those little micro goals. Excuse me. So be specific with your goals. Your goal or your long-term vision might be, hey, I want to be an evangelist to the world. But where in the world? The world is a big place. Where do you want to be an evangelist in the world? It's going to make a big difference. I want to be a missionary. You want to be a missionary where? You want to be a missionary in your own backyard, in your high school? Do you want to be a missionary in Africa? We have to know specifically. Another random statement that we might say is, I want to be healthy and lose weight. Okay, how much weight? How much weight do you want to lose? And by when do you want to lose that weight? See, I think that oftentimes we just say, I want to lose weight, and we leave it at that. And so then we look at ourselves a year later and we haven't lost any weight and we haven't made any headway. Why? Because we didn't set those goals. Like, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next 6 weeks. That is a very tangible micro goal on the way to the macro picture of I want to lose weight. I want to be a healthy weight. Okay, perfect. But what are those small goals? I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to do it in 6 weeks. Well, so on a weekly basis, you're probably stepping on a scale and identifying, are you on track to lose that 10 pounds? You'd have to lose about 1.5 pounds a week to lose that 10 pounds in the 6-week period of time. I want to earn my master's degree. Okay, so how are we going to go about doing that? It's something that's been on my bucket list for several years now, and I haven't established the date because my life is so busy. I have to sit down, identify what's going on in life, set a date and say, this is when I'm going to start the classes to earn my master's degree. So that is the specifics of how do we establish goals. Okay. Second thing that we have to do to establish goals and to be successful at it is prayerfully set your own faith goals. I think that prayer should come into each and every one of these goals. Psalms 5:8 says, lead me in the right direction, O Lord, or my enemies will conquer me. Make your way plain for me to follow. What a great prayer. That should be each one of our prayers on a daily basis. Oh God, lead me on the right path. Make your way plain for me to follow. There is oftentimes throughout the year, probably about 2 times a year, where I will escape from the monotony of my calendar and schedule. And I'll get away and I'll just spend time in prayer. I call them prayer retreats or planning retreats. And I'll just seek God's face. Like, God, what do we need to do over the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year? You know, what are the things that are super important to you? What are you speaking to me for your church? And give me those bite-sized goals so that we can approach our macro vision. I've heard it said the best way to eat an elephant is what? You probably already know it. 1 bite at a time. Those are the goals. The elephant's the vision. The bite is the goal. Third thing that we must do in order to create goals is we must be progressive. Goals should be progressive and lead you in the direction of your vision. Like I said before about the atlas or the map, if I am starting in the Quad Cities and I want to end in Orlando, Florida, I'm not going to set a goal that takes me to Lansing, Michigan, because that takes me far away from my goal. It's not a progressive goal, it's a digressive goal. It's taking me away from the ultimate vision, the ultimate direction that I'm wanting to do. If you're wanting to go to school to be a pastor, then you probably shouldn't take classes on becoming a plumber. You should probably pursue Bible classes, preaching classes, school of ministry on Thursday nights and Saturdays. Goals are like boundaries. They lead you, they direct you, they keep you on track and between the lines of life, so to speak. You know, it's interesting. Last year in August, I had a new pond built on our farm. And a pond is just the accumulation of water runoff. There's no creek or stream running through it. And the thing that you find about ponds very quickly is you can end up with seaweed and moss and other things, algae, because the water is stagnant. It can even become swamp-like if you don't take care of it. So we have to do things to care for the pond, to keep the water quality the way we want it, to keep it looking the way that we want it. It takes a lot of work. But a river, on the other hand, has fast-moving water that sweeps through it, and they're going somewhere. My pond is never going to end up in the ocean. But the Mississippi River that runs just a few miles from our house does end up in the ocean. Why? Because it keeps moving. And as leaders, you and I need to keep moving if we're going to accomplish all that God has for us. And the thing that keeps us moving are those micro goals. Very important. Very important. Fourth thing that we must do to accomplish our goals is we got to write them down. I'll say it again. If you think it, ink it. Especially as you get older, you have them senior moments, or maybe as you take more on in life and you feel a little bit more bogged down or burdened by all the things going on, it becomes increasingly more important to write things down so that you remember them, so that they challenge you, so that they're before you. You know, something interesting, clear back in probably 2014, I started writing goals, and it's when I had a hint that I could potentially be taking over New Life Fellowship. Pastor Rick and I had talked about it. He had said, hey, I'm really feeling God direct me in a new direction like He's never done before. I'm looking for a pastor to take over. So 2014, I knew that it would probably be happening. I just didn't know the date on it. So I started writing things down. If I thought about something that had to do with the church, or I felt like God gave me a word, I would write it down. If you think it, ink it. Man, if God gives you a plan, or if you have a dream that's powerful, write it down, because it's so easy to forget the details that were in whatever that dream or that word from God was. Out of the 5% of people that have goals, only 3% bother to write them down. They found that 3% accomplished 50 to 100 times more than those who just had goals but didn't write them down. As I looked at my goals that I had written down in 2014 and 2015, as I prayed about the position that I knew God was leading me into, it was just a few years ago that I looked over those, and it blew me away that we had already accomplished almost every single one of them. Some of them unconsciously, right? I didn't even write down small micro goals. I just wrote down, hey, these are some goals that I have, and they happened. The other thing that I do on a daily basis is I keep a task list, and it keeps me kind of on track. I can kind of show you. You probably won't be able to see it that well, but it's a whole entire task list. Right now I have about 247 tasks in here. And so on Sunday night, I'll often look at those and I'll categorize them and prioritize them so that I can accomplish them. Even with our staff, I just met with our staff 2 weeks ago and I said, guys, this year, I want you to have short-term goals, midterm goals, and long-term goals. I'd like to know, what are you going to accomplish this week? Those are your short-term goals. I'd like you to have midterm goals where after each quarter we can look and see, did you accomplish the things that God laid on your heart? And then I want you to have more long-term goals that are about a year out. So did you accomplish everything that you had set forth for 2021 to accomplish. And then obviously the vision is the ultimate accomplishment of why you're on this planet and what your life will really be focused on pouring into. Fifth thing is this we have to do is we got to challenge, the goals must be challenging and require faith. One of the things that my pastor in Michigan told me is this, is he said, Brad, set goals bigger, set your vision bigger than you could ever accomplish, because it will help you prevent pride in your life. And so the vision that I have as I look at it, it looks overwhelming. And it definitely requires faith, and it's definitely going to take an act of God to accomplish all the things that I've set forth. I can't do it in my own power. And so it keeps me humble, and it keeps me on my knees before God. And so make sure your goals are challenging, but they still need to be attainable. The vision, on the other hand, could look impossible. But with God, all things are possible. Your goals, number 6, must be realistic and achievable. So, I don't know what it was like to lead 1 million people out of Egypt, the real purpose that God put Moses on this planet for, leading those Israelites through a wilderness, through the Red Sea with walls of water on either side, past Mount Sinai, all of these different things into the promised land. There was a lot of little goals and a lot of little stops before they ever made it to the promised land. Matter of fact, there was times where he probably thought it was impossible to ever get this many people into the promised land. God will never make it. He probably had those thoughts and those doubts. And it took faith to attain that vision. But the goals have to be realistic. Guys, today we're going to travel 10 miles. We're going to make it 10 miles past this place. Hopefully there's a brook up here where we can get fresh water, where we can graze our flocks. So make sure that your goals are realistic and achievable, because every time you achieve a goal, it just builds that confidence, that excitement about where you're heading, and it will help you get to the ultimate vision. 7, include a deadline. There has to be a deadline. What's the date of completion? In our staff meetings, when we talk about the short-term goals of 1 week, or the midterm goals of 3 months, we also put a deadline on those. And then in our minutes the following week, we'll discuss the goals that we had set the previous week or the accomplishments that we needed to do. And so we'll talk about that. Like, okay, hey, last week we talked about this. Did you get that done? There's an accountability factor. There's a completion date that we have in mind, because it then pushes us to get busy instead of remain lazy or complacent. I talked to a couple that was engaged, and I asked them, what's the date for your wedding? You know what they said? They said, we don't have one. And they probably will never have one. They've been engaged for years, and it's just always, we're engaged. And sadly, about a year ago, the fiance passed away, and they never did get married. Like a shopper that doesn't know what they're after, they're just pushing a cart, expending energy as they pass by all the foods in the store. They wander aimlessly, and they end up buying things that they don't need because they didn't have an objective, they didn't have a list, they didn't have direction when they went to the store. When my kids are wanting to spend their birthday money, I become the mean dad. They always laugh and say, you never let us spend our money. Well, here's what I make them do. I make them make a list of the things that they want. And then we'll continue to review that list. And if they continue to want the same thing for a certain period of time and we find it valuable, it's like, hey, let's get that. And certainly we let them spend some of their money on the little things that they want. But for the most part, we want them to save for those things that we know will be very useful in their life. And so we keep coming back to the same thing on the list. That is a good indicator that that might be the thing that they should spend their money on. And so that's how we have set goals even in the area of financial spending for our children. The last thing is this that I'll say before we close is good goals are goals that make you better. They should make you better. Craig Rochelle says this every time he finishes a podcast. When the leader gets better, everybody gets better. You've probably heard it said that everything rises and falls on leadership. You heard that before? I hope so, because we have talked about that right here during our Accelerate classes. Good goals are goals that make us better. Areas of life that we need goals in that I'll challenge you with is this: our spiritual life, our personal life, our family life, our ministry life, and our professional life. I'll tell you, I'm kind of nerdy on this, but on an annual basis, I'll put a list of goals together, and it'll be, here's my spiritual goals. Here's the things that I want to do. I want to do 2 prayer getaways. I want to hear from God. I want to read this many chapters per day. I want to pray for this amount of time. So those are kind of like spiritual goals of me growing. I want to read this many books. Personal goal is more, hey, I want to earn this much money this year. I want to invest this much money this year. I want to buy this many investment properties this year. Or, things like that, personal goals. Or personal goals could be fitness goals. I want to wake up in the morning and I want to spend a half hour on a treadmill and I want to lift weights, or whatever those are, but personal goals. Then family goals. I want to take a vacation with the family 1 week out of the year. Another one is I want to take a vacation with just my wife and I 1 week out of the year. Those become family goals, okay? Marriage goals. I want to do a date night with my wife once every couple weeks to just get away. And the 2 of us, instead of all 4 kids, or whatever, spending time with one another so that we are building our marriage together too. Those are family goals. Ministry goals, as far as the church is concerned. Professional goals. What does life look? I have one task thing in my phone that asks me every day, what does life look like in 10 years? 10 years goes like that. And so what does 10 years from now look like in my life? In my area of fitness, personal, spiritual, ministry, family. What does life look like in 10 years? And then I write down those goals, and then each year I'm looking over those and seeing how productive was I? Did I hit those goals? Was I on track? I kind of got off track on some investing things that I was doing. So this year I'm trying to make up that ground that I lost and invest more and be more intentional about investing. And so I think these are areas that we need to look at and identify some specific goals for, and then constantly have some kind of metric by which we can measure the success of those goals. Darren Hardy, the author of The Compound Effect, set some marriage goals. He had a whole entire list. He had the personality that he wanted, the hair color that he wanted, the disposition that he wanted. And then he asked himself this one thing, and I think this is important for all of us to get this. He said, what am I doing to become the kind of man that will attract that kind of woman? When, I'll end with this, but when I'm doing premarital counseling, I have them write down a list of things that they would want their partner saying about them behind closed doors with their best friend. Let me explain. So for me, I make a list of all the things that I would want my wife gossiping about me to her girlfriends. Well, Brad he's a jerk, or, I don't want her saying those things. Instead, I made a list and I said, I would want her to say that Brad's compassionate, that he's a great dad, that he's an incredible husband, that he listens to me, that he cares about my needs, that he's a good provider. So I make a list, and then I ask myself the question, what do I have to do as a husband to get my wife to voluntarily say those things behind my back to her girlfriends? What do I have to do? And I think we need to ask ourselves the same question, especially in some of these 5 areas. Whether it be your work goals, if you have a set of goals that you would want your boss to think about you, what do you have to do as an employee in order for your boss to talk to you about the way that you would like to be represented or talked about? So goals are a very powerful thing, and they are very simple. They're very simple to write down. It's simple to apply. They're easy to attain, because they're small micro goals on the way to a big macro picture. And you know what, on a tough day, sometimes it's nice to just write down a goal. Your goal might be, go to the bathroom and throw my trash in the dumpster out in the parking lot. But if that's what it takes to motivate you, to get you on your day and get to the next thing, then put it down. And there's nothing that feels better than checking something off of your list because you've accomplished it, right? That's what goals are all about. I hope you got something out of this. If you have questions, please, you can contact our office. We'd love to help you. Also, on Thursday nights, we have more classes available as well at our Launch School Ministry. So I'd love to see you there if you want to go deeper in some of these principles. So God bless you. Have a fantastic night. God bless.